Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world. Welcome to Splendid Isolation number 200. Just let me do my little bit of boomer tech. There we go. That one. Okay, there we go. This may be a very short stream, even though it's our 200th stream, because don't have any guests at the moment. I think AI has said he'll make it, but I had to send him an email today instead of send it on Discord, so that may be delaying him. Anyway, I'm going to start us off with a tune as I usually do. So let's see. Pom 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 pom. Where did I get that from? I don't think that I know. Alright, that should be done. There you go, there it is. Right.
Take up. Best ye breed, go bind your sons to exile to serve your captives need, to wait heavy harness on flood and wall. Your new gods are and people in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride by open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace, fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch love that ye the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with dead. Pick up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of ye God, the cry of hosts ye humor, are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, a loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weary The silent people shall wail God's and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly profit love, ease and grudge praise, comes out to search your manhood through all the thankless years. No age with dear bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all the thankless years.
Good day, Mitch. How are you going, mate?
Same old.
I think AI will be joining us, and I sent out another couple of invites. We'll see if anyone shows up. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get Ataman this evening because Ataman's very sick. So we will all wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll be able to join us next week. So that would be good. Before we move on today, a couple of things. First of all, I did a stream yesterday with Bo Dade, that's History Bro from the Lotus Eaters, and also Aaron, our own Aaron from the Discord, on Winston Churchill. And we went about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we got up to 1933. So we've agreed that we will come back the same time next week, and we will do part 2 of Winston Churchill and British power then, which will go from 1933 to 1945. One other thing, we did get a super chat last week, which I presume was sent after we'd closed down. I did answer it yesterday, but I'll do it again briefly now, just in case the person watching is around. I can't remember his name now. But he asked about the Russian Oreshnik missile. And what I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, go and check the YouTube channel Daniel Davis Deep Dive and look for the video with Professor Ted Postal from MIT. He's a big time fundi. He's a big expert on missiles and what have you. And that is probably the best thing you're going to find on YouTube about that new Russian missile. All right, so that's all the housekeeping. Good evening, Hitman. How are you going?
Oh, I'm all right, thank you.
And how are you going, AI?
Not great. Not
I know
great.
you said you were being stuck by a storm or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've the electricity is gone. I've got candles everywhere. It's like a gothic novel. The tree in our garden is has collapsed, so I'm gonna have to sort that out tomorrow morning.
Wow. Okay. Well, it sounds like all you need is the Bride of Dracula, and you'll be there.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, to be honest, it's I was going to say this. Luckily, the only thing that's going is, hence I'm on here tonight, is the hot personal hotspot, because of course I've got no internet apart from just your personal hotspot. So
Yeah, you're lucky it would work. I've got the most expensive internet I can get in Australia, and my internet is still crap. And I live not in a big city, but near one, and my internet is still crap. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I can contribute tonight in the sense of time, but also because I haven't been able to check what's been, apart from this damn storm, I haven't been able to check what's been going on in the rest of the world. So
I was just going to say that if you might be limited in your connections and time, I was going to ask you if you wanted to start us off, but it doesn't sound like you have a subject, do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I was going to talk about Syria,
Oh, cool. Yep, cool.
the situation in Syria, because that is seems to be moving quite quickly, and this could be indication of sort of like I what I think is going on there. So yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching a bit of stuff about this by that Syrian dude who's in Germany. He's got a YouTube channel which is looks pretty accurate, and these so-called rebels, they're certainly armed and equipped by the Turks. The money is coming from places like the UAE and the place that's got the Al Jazeera network, and obviously the Americans. And it seems to me that the American deep state and Turkey have decided they're going to get this done before Trump gets into power. And yeah, it's not looking good for Assad at the moment. And of course, the Russians are pretty tied up in Ukraine. So yeah, you carry on, AI, please.
So over the last week and a bit, seems to be this new. We talked about it. I think I briefly mentioned it in our previous show, but the development hadn't really occurred on such scale. But the official line is that there is a quote unquote offshoot of quote unquote Al Qaeda, who the Telegraph have referred to them as moderate jihadis. Who but now they're referring to them as Syrian rebels and revolutionaries. So that's the new lingo they're going with. What they'd happen is they appeared in northern Syria, in that bit of territory in northwestern Syria where there's a lot of the force, the jihadis and this Free Syrian Army and what have you, various rebel groups occupy, and they sort of burst out of the scene. They've captured Aleppo, they've captured, I believe, the city of Daria, and
Have
I
they got
don't know.
Have they got Homs yet, AI? Because that's what everyone's saying. If they capture Homs, then Damascus is probably in trouble.
Well, this is the thing. There's been multiple reports that they're inside Homs, and also there's rebel groups that have captured the suburbs of Damascus.
Yeah, Assad is in big trouble.
Yeah, and also while this has gone on, the Kurds have reestablished their control in northeastern Syria. They're sort of really dominated there. There's a rebel group in the eastern part, the desert region of Syria, not too far from Palmyra, the city of Palmyra. Of course, everyone remembers what ISIS did there, the destruction of historic sites and
the Syrian dude I was talking about earlier, I put a couple of his videos up on our Discord, and he was telling a story of a Christian girl in Syria, because there's quite a big Christian population in Syria, one of the few that is left in the Middle East. And I know Hitman was talking about this subject on his own stream earlier today. And the guy was saying that these so-called rebels, they got hold of this Christian girl, they raped her repeatedly, and then they stoned her to death because she was a Christian. That's how moderate they are.
Yeah, I've also seen a clip going around, and it's been on Twitter. It was pretty disturbing to see. They captured a Syrian soldier, the Syrian government soldier, and basically they stabbed him in the neck and then just went to cut off his head with this machete-like knife. And so, I mean, they are just brutal barbarians. They're just very brutal people.
They're very much still the same sort of people as Al Qaeda and the Islamic State. They're exactly the same people. They're just equipped by the Turks and financed by the Americans. So
Well, this is the thing. And people have been sharing images of the body armor, because this is the thing. They all wear body armor. They've all got this very khaki and camo, desert camo body armor. They've got weapons which are not just your AKs, but some, different, more, let's say,
they've got some
Western
Turkish small
style
arms. They have some
weapons.
Turkish small arms for sure.
Yeah, Turkish small arms. And also they have like Humvees as well. I mean, I saw a clip, the clip of them heading towards Homs. There was a convoy of not just your regular Toyota pickup trucks, but also um, couple Land Rovers, but also military Humvees as well.
Yeah. They've also AI. They've also got some Turkish light APCs as well. They're very, very
Yeah,
obviously
I
supported by
Turks.
Erdogan
Yeah,
in Turkey
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I saw the Turkish APC as well, because that was part of that was what went part of the convoy, and also I think artillery as well. They got they haven't just got your missile back of the truck missile ones. They've got proper artillery as well with them. Um, from my understanding, the support that Assad's been given, Russia is currently using airstrikes to try and slow the advance.
Yeah, I've
But
seen some of that. Yeah.
the thing though is, I don't know how true this is. There is also reports that Russia is withdrawing troops from Syria, like frontline troops, as in not air support, but just like ground forces.
I believe the Russians said that if the rebels, in air quotes, if they take Homs, the Russians have said they'll withdraw their embassy. So
Yeah, and so the question is, because the region of Syria between Lebanon and just north of Lebanon and south of Turkey that borders the Med, that is like the heartland of the Alawites, which is the group that Assad and his family belong
yeah,
to. That is the heartland. And so the question will be, what if the rebels do? Because if the rebels take Damascus, in theory, the regime won't just may not just quickly fall apart like you saw in Afghanistan, because there will be like a heartland that Assad could, in theory, go to, and I'm told also, because it's quite a mountainous region as well, that there is some natural barriers that they can rely on. There's also the other question that I haven't seen talked about, is what will Iran do? Because of course, being part of the Shia faction, Iran could come in and support the regime to keep their influence in in the area, which I think is possible. They could use their proxies in Iraq to do that. So it depends. But from what I understand, this does seem like a Western ploy to uh, basically get Syria out from the uh, BRICS Russian influence. Trying to get them back on into Western sides. Obviously, though, because of this, like with all these revolutions in the Middle East, even if this so-called moderate jihadi group, or whatever they call themselves, were to be successful, it will just dissolve into religious Islamic religious infighting, factionalism, and many versions of Reign of Terror.
oh yeah, but it'll be beheadings and sex slaves all around for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
and the big thing is, of course, the Christian. There's a large Christian or there was a large Christian population in Aleppo. I don't think that exists anymore. But in and around Damascus, Iron Duke, in the suburbs and around Damascus, there are a lot of Christian towns and places, and even in the Alawite areas, there's a lot of Christians. So that question will be like, what's going to happen with them? Many of the Christians support Assad for obvious reasons, reasons that you stated earlier, for obvious reasons. But also, Iron Duke, there's another thing that's been not mentioned: the Druze, not the Jews with the J, but the Druze with the D.
yes.
Another religious group, separate of Islam and Christianity. Now they frequent their sort of area is, I believe, it's around the border with the
Well,
Gul.
the region is it's called the Jabal el Druze, and it's just to the east of Damascus. It's near the border with Jordan, near the bit the
Yeah,
Americans are in Syria.
that's
It's
right.
interesting to see what the Druze do because the Druze are actually quite warlike. As I don't know if you know, when the French took over Syria in the 20s, there was actually a massive revolt, and the Druze spearheaded that revolt against the French, and they were actually quite fierce. So
Yeah,
Yeah, and
listen, I'm gonna hand this over to Hitman and Mitch in a minute because I know Mitch has been following this, and this is one of the subjects that Hitman is interested in. But
yeah, I
I
mean,
would just say that what people I've been watching are saying that Assadly needs like 20,000 troops if he's going to turn this around. He's not going to get them from the Russians by the looks of it, because if the Russians were going to give him 20,000 men, they would have airlifted them in by now. So his only real option is Iran.
well, the thing now, now this is something I Duke that, and this is something maybe Hitman or Mitch, I don't know if they know. I saw on a Telegram group yesterday. Now, this is a massive pinch of salt, but that the Druze, the Druze paramilitary group that have had huge success, like really, really huge success in the region in Syria, forcing the Assad forces out of the area completely, were basically backed, financing, given weapons and aid and all that's directly from Israel, like a lot of support from Israel. I don't know how true that is, but given the location and everything, I can believe that is a
Yes, I
possibility.
can believe that too. Yes,
Because,
certainly.
and the reason why this Anon said that was they wanted to create a buffer state in case this jihadi group does succeed in the
Well,
sense.
yeah, what Israel will do is they will just increase the. I mean, like they already occupy the Golan Heights, which is really part of Syria. They'll just extend that.
Yeah,
Israel's always willing to take more land if they can get it.
and I think somebody in chat, the Wiggles, does also, the Jews are responsible for anti-Christian Damascus pogroms and everything. So yeah, I mean, the one group in this whole thing that will probably come out worse worse in any scenario is probably the Christians. If I'm absolutely honest, the
Well,
remaining
yeah.
Christians are going to go absolutely screwed over and.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They'll be pushed out of the region, even if they're not killed. Very likely.
Unfortunately, with any kind of civil unrest, civil war, you name it, in the Middle East, the one group that are always raped and murdered, it's always the Christians, sadly, no matter who's involved.
I was going to say Hitman because like I'm Duke, I watched your stream, and one thing that reminded me was there was this interview recently with on Joe Rogan. I saw like this clip going around on Joe Rogan clips on YouTube, and there was this guy who worked with like the military infrastructure in Iraq, and he was talking about because he was involved with capturing Saddam and Saddam allies. And one thing that he said, which was quite interesting, is a lot of Saddam's advisors and people in his inner circle were Christian in Iraq. And one of the reasons why that there was overrepresentation of Christian was because Saddam knew Muslims would happily martyr themselves. Christians don't do that, and so that was one of the reasons why purportedly he surrounded himself with many Christian officials and people in his household.
Saddam's foreign minister was a Christian, I do believe.
Yeah, there was. I mean, all the people at his palace, like all the servants, even like the staff, like all of them were Christian, which was quite interesting to learn that he surrounded himself with many Christians. So
yeah, it is interesting. Hitman, what's your take on this situation?
Well, it's certainly gotten worse for Assad, and again, I agree with you. If he loses Homs, it's almost game over at that point because the road to Damascus is clear. he'll be cut off from the Alawite heartland on the coastal strip of Syria. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's not looking very, very good for him right now.
Yeah, Homs has fallen by the looks of it. The Syrian army's just left a place where they're fighting. Like, you've got Syrian armies where like soldiers are trying to ride like 9 guys onto a single moped, for example. So it's just complete chaos. Not even really fighting.
What I heard, I don't know if this is true, but what I heard was that Saddam had, sorry, not Saddam, Assad had quite a few veteran soldiers, because obviously the civil war in Syria had been going on for like a dozen years now. And he actually demobbed quite a lot of his veterans, so that the army which gave way was mostly new conscripts who had very little experience. But anyway.
Yeah, and also trusted the Turks too much. Like, the thing was, some people like, you could argue like Assad could have come to a deal with Erdogan, but then again, Erdogan, because Erdogan has ambitions. You know, he's pretty much a neo-Ottomanist, so he had troops embedded in North Syria, and he wasn't going to pull them out, regardless of what Assad could concede. Whereas Erdogan, he also had his own issues. However, I think Erdogan, he's got like 3.6 million Syrian refugees in his country, and there have been riots on the streets of Turkish cities wanting the Syrians out. So Erdogan, he's kind of feeling the pressure to get the Syrian civil war wrapped up, or turf the refugees out, whichever way it happens. So you can imagine he probably got the Islamists in Idlib to just go on the offensive. He probably fitted them up and just said, "Look, you got an opportunity to strike," and that's what he wants.
I think Erdogan is a very slippery character. I mean, he's been making all these. Yeah, he's been making all these speeches about the Palestinians and what have you. And as has been pointed out, about 40% of Israel's oil comes through Turkey. So if he really wanted to help the Palestinians, he has a very easy way of doing so, which he has not.
Bearing in mind, Turkey and Israel have common interests. Like, for example, the Azeri-Armenian conflict, the drones that the Azeris were using were made in Israel, and a lot of the military hardware that the Azeris were working with, in terms of recon capabilities and whatnot, was supplied by the Turks. So
I heard that they were, Mitch. I heard that they were the Islamic fanatics, who are these supposed rebels that Turkey armed. They were also using Ukrainian drones, and some people were even saying the Ukrainian secret police were helping them. So, you know, which I could well believe.
Well, I mean, you got Visegrad and all these pro-Ukrainian NAFO types who are all cheerleading these Islamists taking on Assad because it's, but they just think, oh, well, Assad is a friend of Putin, therefore Assad must go, even though those who replace him will be far worse than anything Assad could do. I mean, there's a lot of critiques of Assad surfacing up on the grid where it's like, okay, he let army corruption fester. He trusted certain countries too much. He didn't really make the best of a position he did. I mean, for example, he tried to recover the economy of Syria, but the problem was all the oil wells are either held by the Americans or the Kurds, and the agricultural land that he controls is ruined by years of war. So
and I know that the thing about the Americans controlling the oil wells is very definitely the truth. It's not looking good for Assad, I've got to say. And it's very deeply suspicious that this happens before Trump takes power in America, and Trump has made it pretty clear he wants to get out of Syria. So, you know.
I'm Duke. I'm gonna head.
Hang on. You were saying AI.
Sorry, I was gonna say I'm gonna head off now because the it keeps on signal keeps on blipping in and out. But so I'll just say thanks for having me on for this short segment here.
All right, I'll make sure to put a link to your channel up at the end of the stream, AI, and I hope you get your electricity back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, hopefully so. So thank you, everyone. And just I had a quick look on the BBC News website, or it just came up on the bit. Apparently, Homs has fallen. That's one of the things that's coming through now. Is the rebels are in the city centre, so that's what I'm reading. So it looks like
Assad is in the ship, basically.
yeah, basically this is that's that for him. So anyway, on that note, thank you all and good night.
Yeah, go well, AI, and thanks for coming
Go well.
Hitman, Mitch, anything add to this? I mean, it sounds like Homs has fallen. Everything I've read, if Homs falls, then Damascus is very unlikely to hold out.
Yeah, bearing in mind the lightly armed protesters in Madaba governorate, which is like south of Damascus, that governorate has largely fallen without so much of a fight, and they're already on the outskirts of Damascus. Like the Syrian army is retreating to the center of Damascus. That's what I heard like 12 hours ago. So yeah,
it's all looking very messy, and I just wish that the Western media would realize that these people who they're touting as some sort of freedom fighters are actually fanatical Islamic fanatics who will simply start chopping heads off and raping women and taking sex slaves and all the other stuff that the Islamic State was infamous for doing. They're the same people, basically.
Yeah, but we've all got pedophiles, so do you really think they're going to see sense on this one? I mean, look what happened to Libya and Gaddafi. So
yeah, exactly. And if Assad's not careful, he could end up the same way, as someone was saying in chat earlier.
He's already fled, so...
Assad's already fled Syria?
Yeah, there was a plane going to... I think it was somewhere like... Going to somewhere like... it was either UAE or somewhere in that neck of the woods that the plane was going.
He wants to be careful because Qatar is one of the countries which is... financing these rebels, so he can't just go anywhere he likes. That's for sure. If I'd have been him, I'd have been probably inclined to head towards Russia myself. But anyway,
also this whole idea of him getting the Gaddafi treatment. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, but the bloody NATO shill Gunther Fellinger, he put this really revolting tweet out where he basically implied that Assad deserves the Gaddafi treatment, and Charlemagne came out and said, right, we should all just block him and not follow him anymore for that, because that is truly disgusting.
Yep, it is. I mean, for anybody, Goth bureaucrat, if you're not careful, I shall ban you. It's 8:30 in the morning here, mate. But anyway, for anyone who doesn't know, Gaddafi was killed with a bayonet up his rear end. And of course, the vile Hillary Clinton thought that was funny.
We came, we saw, he died. Evil witch cackle.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, once he was gone, thousands and thousands and thousands of economic migrants were soon going across the Channel to Italy and other countries. So yeah. Across the Mediterranean to Italy and other countries. So yeah, it's not looking too good for Assad, and it doesn't look to me like. I mean, Russia looks like they've cut their losses pretty much there, from what I can see. I mean, they've got some Air Force stuff there and some ships, but I mean, those could be moved very easily.
The thing is, what can we expect Russia and Iran to do? Like, Iran's lost it entirely, and Russia, well. I mean, they've supplied air assets. They've done their fair share of the fighting, and they've lost a lot of good men over the years. But at the end of the day, if the Syrian army is refusing to fight, what can you do? This is all on Assad, to be honest. Like, he's refused help from Iran in the past, to get normalized by the Arab League, in the past. So, I mean, if you're going to blame someone for all this catastrophe, you can't blame Assad, because he made a lot of pretty bad decisions for the last 7 years. For example, the Russians even proposed this constitution to Assad, where they said, look, you can compromise with the so-called with some of these rebel factions, the actual genuine rebels, by decentralizing some of your power. Now, of course, Assad wasn't a fan of that, and there was no attempt to compromise, really. So it's one of those things where, you can't really, people having a bollock at, let's say, Russia and Iran and go, well, Russia and Iran have done their fair share, including Hezbollah as well. But
yeah, and I
the
mean,
Syrian army
Russia
refuses
is
to fight.
but Russia is involved in a big war, so they probably don't have 20,000 troops to send to Syria, even if they wanted to do so. And the Iranians and Hezbollah have just concluded some sort of armistice with the Israelis. So, I mean, who knows what's going on there.
Also, another point I want to bring, because you guys mentioned about Erdogan and the Turks propping up and helping the Syrian rebels. Well, another point we should bring up, which is probably a failing of Assad's, I think, is are either of you familiar with the Hatay dispute between Turkey and Syria?
Hatay, that's that little strip of land. But but is it? It's a bit Anatolian plateau, isn't it? So that's where it is.
Well, it's that little bit of territory of Turkey's that juts out just north of the Alawite bit, coastal bit of Syria. So it historically has been considered part of Syria. I mean, obviously when they had the Ottoman Empire, it was all just one territory. But when the French set up their mandate for Syria, Hatay was part of the French mandate for Syria, and Turkish nationalists and Ataturk were very incensed that Hatay was given to the French mandate for Syria, and they lobbied for it for 20 years. And in 1939, there was a plebiscite, and the people who voted allegedly voted to join Turkey, and so France then just handed it over. The Syrians ever since have been bitterly angered over the handover of what they see as their rightful territory. I think there was a bit of dodgy shenanigans with that referendum because Turks do not form a majority of the population there. And so I'm a bit cynical as to, did really the majority of the population really vote to join Turkey? So there are question marks over that. And to this day, Syria has never dropped claims to Hatay, and it has inflamed relations. So part of me's thinking that obviously there's many other factors for why Erdogan is probably helping the rebels, but I can't help but think Assad surely should set, maybe as part of some deal with the Turks, said, okay, if you stop supporting the rebels, we'll drop our claim on Hatay, because Assad should at least try to consolidate what he's got with Syria rather than try and maintain claims on the territory he's got no chance of reclaiming.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all gone to shit now by the looks of it. So yeah. I must say, I do feel a bit sorry for the ordinary people in Syria, because they're not going to win out of this. They're just not. It's pretty obvious they're going to be in for a very nasty time. Erdogan is probably going to get territory, and he'll probably get more than that bit of territory that you were talking about him, and he may well take more than that. Israel's probably going to take some as well. So, Syria's not going to be in a good position.
Well, I don't think he wants territory because, again, there's no real Turks in Syria. The only population that obviously might be interesting is the northeast corner where you've got the Kurds, because Turkey obviously has a large Kurdish population in the southeast.
Yeah, I heard, Hitman, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard that what Erdogan would like to be able to do is to shift the Kurds actually in Turkey into a new bit of territory, which is kind of semi-Turkish, but mainly in Syria. I don't know how true. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that suggested that is one of the things Erdogan might like to do.
Well, he very well could take over the northeast corner of Syria, and then just try and encourage Kurds in the Turkish part of Kurdistan into that region. Yeah,
and possible. Also, as you were saying earlier, he's got all these. I'm not sure if it was you or Mitch, that he's got all these refugees. He can also shove all those guys back into Syria now as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it's not looking at all good for the Syrian people or for Assad. And Assad, despite the reputation he has in the Western nations, according to the mainstream media, he's actually fairly moderate. You know, he doesn't, by and large, kill large numbers of people or anything like that. You know, he's a pretty moderate Arab ruler for the most part. And he's also not a religious fanatic, which, you know, in the old days, we used to like people not being religious fanatics, but apparently that has now changed.
Well, the main problem, mind you, is obviously he doesn't buy up with the, you know, the Western love of democracy and anal sex, so that's why he has to go.
The big gay, exactly. Very, very true. Mitch, did you have a first subject you wanted to talk about this evening?
Well, what happened this week? I mean, you have I don't know if you want I don't even know what to make of a South Korea situation. Personally, it was basically just president tried to do a coup. He didn't consolidate support among his own party for it, so it was just him, and he didn't talk to anyone about. Not even the Americans knew about it. It was all over after like a few hours because Parliament voted against it and the president stepped down, even though he had the entire army on his side.
Yes,
and then
did,
they had a vote. Then they had a vote to try and impeach him, but his own party didn't turn up. So he's basically just this weird situation where the president tried to coup the country, and the country can't get rid of him in impeaching. So it's just
so far as I understand it, Mitch, we're talking about South Korea, obviously, for people in the chat. He was elected as kind of a last-ditch right-wing leader, and South Korea is increasingly starting to suffer from the big gay stuff that all the rest of us suffer from now. You know, feminism.
We actually had a feminist government like 10 years ago as well.
And it's becoming stronger. There's some movement in South Korea which you know, is against women getting married and all the rest of it.
I think it's called B4 or something, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, Hitman. This president was supposed to be elected against that. And but the party that's against him, the ones who wanted to impeach him, are very like lefty liberal types who fully support the GAE, you know. So yeah.
Well, and the consequence of that, South Korea's got one of the lowest birth rates in the world. It's something like 1.1 or something.
Yeah, it's worse than ours even, which is saying something. Yeah,
we're like 1.5. They're like 1.1.
Yeah, it's worse than ours. It's worse than the Japanese.
South Korea is actually like something like 0.8, I think.
Or, God!
Some regions.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah,
it's really bad for sure.
Yeah, 1.1. I think that's Japan, or is it 1.2 for Japan? Because I participated earlier in the Discord. South Korea's got the lowest birth rate. Ukraine had one child per woman last year, so you can't imagine what it is now. In Ukraine, you've got, I think like Taiwan is at 0.95, so they're gonna go pretty bad. I think China's birth rate apparently went up to like 1.25 from like 1.2 last year. But basically, Eastern Asia is just going to have like a massive population. And the thing about, to be fair, it's going to be offset by the fact that Trump, at the end of the day, Trump is going to basically, his election is going to mean that there's going to be plenty of more white lads joining the army. So the gay is able to replenish itself after demoralizing white men for so long. For example, you got this Daniel Penny situation, which, well, I won't be surprised if they acquit him for pragmatic reasons. Can't demoralize white men too much if they're wanting the empire.
Don't forget, though, Mitch, in regard to that Daniel Penny thing, they've dropped they've dropped the involuntary manslaughter charge, which could have got him 10 years. But the secondary charge, which they haven't dropped, and I've watched quite a lot of American lawyers who've said they think that what the judge has done here is probably not legal. But it's in New York, of course, which is a lefty place, and with lefty judges, and it's very much a racially motivated trial. If he'd have been a black guy, there's no way it would have gone to court at all. But even the lesser thing that they've charged him with could still get him 4 years in prison.
Yeah, it's like because the thing was, so like I was just going to finish off the point about South Korea being because their population is going to collapse massively, and then right next door to North Korea, who are modernizing their military with the help of Russia. You can imagine the Americans are going to have to increase their garrison in South Korea in order to offset, of course, this population collapse going on in South Korea, so the empire will get more burdens. However, because Trump's gotten elected and the Republican Party are probably basically going to dominate with this sort of MAGA type of politics for a long while yet, it's going to give more life to the gay, unfortunately. So that won't be too much of a problem, really, because I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you were to ask, like, I mean, perhaps North Korea might do another date on what they did with the first term Trump, but I don't know. I mean, it's a different world now, isn't it, because of what Biden's done in his term.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? If I was North Korea, I probably wouldn't do anything militarily, just because it looks like this lefty lot who tried to impeach the president are probably going to win the next election anyway. And that's going to do half of North Korea's work for them. So, why do they need to?
Yeah, but the American empire is still strong, unfortunately. That's a problem. Like, it is a bit of a pick and mix situation with Trump in the sense that, yes, he's going to move things our way, civilization in the West, but at the same time, he also gives more life to the global Homo empire, if you like. So, unfortunately, it's like, for example, there's latest shenanigans in Syria where Bashar Assad's now been toppled. You basically got a situation where the neocons, they've now been empowered because they can just because now they've got good victories to say to Trump, look, we've done this, we've saddled you with this, or oh, look at us, we've had successes on this. They're able to pressure him more. That's one thing what the deep state might do onto Trump is they'll pressure him to be a lot more neocon this time around compared to what, let's say, his first term where he wasn't really starting wars. I think
he wanted to get out of Syria in his first term, and the American general staff simply ignored him, even though he was the commander in chief. So
yeah, and I just think, and it's like with respect to the Middle East, I mean, Trump is just a massive Zionist, so he's not going to change much in that score, is he?
Well, I mean, the Israel lobby undoubtedly just controls American politics. It just does. Both sides of the fence. So
yeah. So if you're looking at things from a geopolitical perspective, it's going to get even crap for the world in general, because America is going to be ascendant. Because Russia, for example, they're doing well in Ukraine, but outside of that, I mean, the so-called autocratic axis we keep talking about, where it's like, the world, like those are anti-Western, like Iran or whoever else. I just routinely humiliated. Like they can't score a victory anywhere. So in a sense, the gay, as we call it, probably has his lifespan prolonged by just the incompetence of someone like Iran, for example. So that's a bit of a.
It's possible. Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to make predictions these days. A lot of people are nothing ever happens, blah blah. I don't know. I think it's pretty clear that Russia is certainly going to win in Ukraine. In fact, they basically have won. The only issue in Ukraine is going to be how much territory they take, basically. And even the Rat King himself, Zelensky, is now saying, "Yeah, I'll give up territory for peace," because he doesn't have any choice, because the Russians control that territory. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, Evola's sunglasses in the chat is talking about how much money he took from the Israel lobby, the Trump. But the Democrats and the Republicans are both totally in the pocket of the Israel lobby. If you don't support the Israel lobby in America, you do not get to run to be president. It's as simple as that. You don't get into Congress. It's just not possible. They totally dominate American politics. It's just a fact.
It's like Matt Gaetz, for example, is like a keynote example where he's not too fond of the APAC domination, and they were able to get Trump to drop him for favor of that, what's her name? I know, the blonde woman, I can't remember
The
her
gun
name.
control woman, yes, I know who you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of disappointment from this Trump administration at times. Like, I think that's
For
a
sure.
bitter pill. We're going to get disappointed with some of the stuff Trump will do. Like, for example, if you're going off the Attorney General pick alone, I mean, he's hit the ground running thus far, for the most part. Like, for example, I think practically manhandled Macron because he was meeting with Macron and Zelensky regarding the Ukraine war. So perhaps there might be a peace sorted out, but I don't know. I mean, if you're Putin, right, you've got a strong position, and Trump doesn't want to be known as a guy who sold out Ukraine.
I don't think Trump cares about that. I honestly don't think Trump cares about that. I think Trump has made his position clear.
The neocons do, and they dominate a lot of the GOP. So Trump doesn't have
for sure.
on this issue.
For sure. Look, we will have to wait and see. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would say Trump doesn't really care about Ukraine, and if Putin is strong enough to push for it, I think Putin will get 95% of what he wants in Ukraine.
I just think what's probably going to more happen is you're just going to have Ukraine will claim they're going to compromise, but not compromise too much, because at the end of the day, there are vested interests in Ukraine, like such as the nationalists who don't want to give away any land. And to be fair, Ukrainian propaganda has said for a long time, we're going to win. Look, we're winning so hard, blah, blah, blah. It's basically going to be like a situation akin to Weimar Germany, where the Germans were told all throughout the First World War they were winning the war until they didn't. And the population just feels stabbed in the back. So if we have Zelensky agreeing to give away land after years of telling his own people they're going to win the war,
I think Zelensky. I think that probably not long after Trump gets into power, if not before, Zelensky will be on his way to Florida or somewhere, or maybe even Israel, but certainly away from Ukraine, because otherwise he's going to get a bullet in the back of the head from his own people, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, it's like Georgia had their own guy, Saakashvili, who the Georgians hate him because he was corrupt and he mistreated a lot of his political opposition who he arbitrarily locked up. He then gets rewarded by, I think it was Zelensky actually rewarded him, or Petro Poroshenko before him, rewarded him with a governorship in Odessa. So that was kind of like the situation you had. So I don't think so Zelensky will probably have to flee abroad.
Yes, I believe that case, yeah. I'd be amazed if Zelensky stays in Ukraine if he's still alive. I'd be very surprised if he stays there.
Yeah, he can't stay because it's like what happened to the Kaiser in Germany. 1 minute you're saying, you told they're going to win the war, and then all of a sudden you sign a peace treaty saying you're going to give away this amount of land. It's just not. No Ukrainian leader can survive that. After telling these people for so long they're going to win the war.
Well, and having so many of them killed and maimed for no purpose. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely correct. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about in terms of Korea and the Ukraine, Hitman?
I think Hitman said he was going to be back in a bit. So.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But yeah, we've been saying this for a very long time now. I mean, it's not possible to reverse the situation in Ukraine for the Ukrainians, even with the backing of the Americans in NATO, and I don't think Trump's got any interest in doing so, partly because I think Trump can see that it's a lost war. You can't turn it around. It's not possible. Even if the West wanted to give Ukraine more aid, and the Americans especially are getting very sick of it now, the American public, that is, there's no more weapons to give them. We don't have any spare weapons left. It's
I'm a point of the American. I'm a point of the American public. I mean, Americans have opposed mass immigration for years, but let's face it, even in our democracies, it doesn't matter what the people think. It just matters if they vote the way our elites want them to.
Well, yeah.
So I don't see that.
We have to see if Trump actually builds the wall this time. And if he does do mass deportations, if he does those two things, I think most right of center Americans will be reasonably happy with him, even if he doesn't manage to do some other things in terms of foreign policy. Because, Trump was mainly elected for internal American reasons. If he can get, I think most Americans would be happy enough if he got American troops out of Syria, for example, but they're much more interested in him building the border wall in the south and in doing the mass deportations of all the illegal immigrants who the Democrats allowed in. If he does those two things, people will be fairly happy with him in America anyway. Hitman, are you back yet, mate?
Yeah, I'm back here.
Did you have anything you wanted to say about either Korea or Ukraine?
The only thing is the president looked very weak because not only did he get struck down because he clearly had no plan, he then cut and apologized. Oh, I'm so sorry for trying to declare martial law. Like it's so base male pathetic. It's like I don't think anything like that's ever happened. Like, has a leader ever tried to declare martial law, failed, and then just cut and apologized like that?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
It doesn't do his long-term position any good, I would say, that's for sure. Did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up, Hitman?
Well, I was going to bring up Syria, but we've already discussed that because I mentioned it. So, if we're going to bring up anything else, can't really think of anything else.
Okay, because I was going to bring things back to Britain a little bit because we've been traveling around the world this evening a bit. What do we think about Farage and reform, I guess, is the thing.
Obviously, that poll got released that showed them ahead of Labour but behind the Tories.
Which is not good. That's not good. I just don't understand anyone who still supports the so-called Conservative Party under their Nigerian leader. I do not understand it at all, I'm afraid.
Never.
I've got my criticisms of Trump. Sorry, I've got my criticisms of Farage, but he's not as bad as this Nigerian woman who now runs the so-called, in air quotes, Conservative Party. It's crazy.
Well, never underestimate the ability for the boomers to utterly just prostrate themselves before quote-unquote based black women. So this is what it's just. Yeah, I'm looking at this particular case where, at the end of the day, look. I was liking what Farage was saying earlier today, where he said anti-white discrimination, because it turns out MI5, MI6, and GCHQ were forbidding any white applicants for any jobs.
Yep. Just as they did with RAF Aircrew last year. They were doing that with RAF Aircrew last year.
Yeah, Zia Yusuf, of all people, he says discrimination of natives in reference to that, which I found interesting because he's so basically Zia Yusuf is basically using the same rhetoric as us when we say, white British, synonymous with the word native in reference to this country. So
yes,
I don't distrust him as much as I did earlier. By the looks of it, he seems to be a good chap.
Look, I think it's going to Farage and reform are going to be a bit like Trump and the MAGA thing in America. There's going to be good bits and less good bits. I think, Farage and Reform are not going to be perfect, sadly. They're not going to come in and start deporting people in vast numbers. Sadly, I wish they would, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. They may start deporting illegal economic migrants and some serious foreign criminals. They may do that, but I think that's probably the best we can hope for if they get enough votes to actually gain power, which they have to do. So yeah, you know my views, guys. I've said this before. There are things about Farage and Reform I don't like at all, but we have no other option at the next general election. The one after that, maybe we'll have another option, but the next one, we're not. Reform is going to be the only game in town if you're a real right-wing person. So
yeah, it's worth bearing in mind. I think like Bovril on Twitter said best. The thing was, the civil service, they're all crap him a bed because Starmer said something that they didn't like. So let's say, for argument's sake, the civil service actually bring down Keir Starmer for argument's sake, and we get a general election off the back of that. And let's say, for argument's sake, we were to get a reform government. Even for reform to implement their milquetoast net zero migration policy, let alone something more amenable to like net emigration, you'd have to do a massive. You'd have to massively purge the civil service. So let's say, for argument's sake, Farage was in power. Yes, I think he would, to clean up the institutions enough, they would make other more right-wing parties. It made their jobs easier if they were to get into government at a later point.
yes, yeah, and I mean, we can't afford to have 5 or 10 more years of around 1 million immigrants coming in every year. It's just going to make the situation vastly worse in all respects. It will push more unemployment in Britain. It will push housing costs, both buying and renting, up through the roof. And obviously, it's going to even further change the demographics of the country. Anything that reduces that is going to be a good thing. Dead air, guys. Dead air.
No, sorry. No, certainly. And I mean, it's interesting. Starmer's comments, like literally missing the what they claimed wasn't happening for years. It actually did happen by design. But ultimately, he's trying to make it out to be the Tories, which it was, to be fair. But it's very, very convenient for Labour, ignoring all the years under Blair where it started. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely true. Blair started the what was it? His cabinet minister was saying, we're going to rub their noses, meaning the British people. We're going to rub their noses in diversity.
That was so-called based David Blanket.
Yeah, really based, very based. Yeah. The people who try and tell me the Labour Party are based, I really have no time for them. But on the other hand, the only thing you can say is that Labour have been more honest than the so-called Conservatives, who like election after election promised much lower immigration and then just completely didn't do that, and indeed did the opposite. I did like the Reform MP. Actually, it wasn't the Reform MP, was it? It was Ben Habib. I did like Ben Habib last week when he was pointing out that Brexit has still not really been properly done. Britain is still not as separated from the EU as we voted to be. So,
Yeah, I thought it was worth because I don't know if you watched that Question Time with Alistair Campbell versus Farage, where there's a little bit where Alistair Campbell, he's saying like, oh well, before Brexit, like 80% of our immigration was from the European Union, and he was basically like, it's kind of like if you're conspiratorial enough, like if you follow what AA and his lot say about them putting a welcome away or whatever he says about Starmer, because basically you got these new Labour types who are just saying, "Oh yeah, we prefer immigration," back when it was literally just Slovak baristas from Bratislava or Polish plumbers, as opposed to the Boris wave migrants we had from coming from areas like Somalia or Afghanistan and Pakistan and so on.
And India, of course.
Yeah, and it's
Look, the British people have always been against mass immigration, like going right back into the 1960s when Enoch Powell was around and got enormous amounts of support, particularly from British working class people. They've always been against mass immigration, and governments, both Labour and so-called Conservatives, have simply ignored them. And as Hitman was saying, Starmer has now admitted they were deliberately ignoring them. It wasn't by accident. Not that any of us who follow these things thought it ever was by accident, of course. But, there we go.
No, certainly not.
I think, one of the things that you would have to get if you got a reform government, even to put through the program they have at the moment, and let's be clear, it's much, much better than what is on offer from Labour or the so-called Conservatives under their Nigerian leader. To push this through, they're going to have to make big changes to the civil service. Really are.
No, you're just going to need someone strong-willed enough to actually do it, though.
Yeah.
And have a plan in place.
Yeah, look, I have my doubts if Farage is that man, but I guess we'll see. And, someone else could come up within reform at some point. Who knows?
Well, Farage would have to do it because I think it's something like half the civil service wants him dead. Like, in fact, Stephen Edgerton, he had a whistleblower from the civil service telling him, "Oh yeah, half the civil service wants him dead." So Farage has to, as a matter of necessity, if he were in power, because literally half of them want him dead. Because it was in the backdrop of that Trump assassination attempt, where Corey Compiatorial, whatever his name was, got killed. Apparently, the civil service, apparently a lot of them were heard as saying, "I wish that would happen to Farage," or words of that nature. So
wouldn't surprise me at all, because they're absolutely dominated by the lefty liberal agenda, for sure. The British civil service is very much the same as the bias brainwashing corporation and what have you. It's got the same political views. It probably goes to the same dinner parties. That's what the British civil service is like. Certainly, most of the higher levels, anyway.
It's worth noting. I was going to say also another thing about it is I suppose you'll know Farage has been serious about, let's say, getting rid of the civil service. If you see something like him bringing on someone like Dominic Cummings on side.
That might be useful if he did that, because he's at least an insider and he knows how to do some of this stuff. I wouldn't say that Cummings is our bloke at all, but he does know how to manipulate the levers and what have you. So yeah, he could be a good guy to get on side.
The only issue is that Cummings and Farage hate each other, and I could not see them working together.
Maybe at arm's length. It wouldn't be beyond Farage to be able to put somebody else to be the guy that Cummings deals with.
Well, it just goes back to the 2016. Remember, there were two Leave campaigns. One was Cummings and Boris and Gove, and the other was Farage. And that's kind of where the beef came from.
Yeah, which is crazy, because Farage back then, he actually not back then, after this, when Boris won, Farage basically let Boris win, because he stood down candidates all over the place who would have been standing against the Conservatives, which in retrospect was obviously a mistake, but that's what he did.
Yeah, no, well, hopefully something can come about of that, but I'm not positive.
No, look, I'm not positive about anything at the moment. I mean, as I was saying about Trump, I mean, if Trump does actually build the wall this time and get it finished, which I suspect he might, and if he actually does do these mass deportations, then that can be considered a success in many respects. But I'm not hopeful of him achieving a lot more than that, to be quite honest with you. I mean, if he can also bully the Europeans, including the Brits, into spending more on defence, that would probably be a good thing too. But I don't know if he'll manage that. We'll see. The Brits, for example, are in the middle of a defence review at the moment, and what Britain calls a defence review is always invariably defence cuts. And I'm hearing some quite disturbing stuff coming out of that at the moment. So we'll see.
It's like so for example, Sonny Jim said earlier. Apparently, Farage himself is anti-Iran, and you've got Trump, who's also anti-Iran. So we might get defense spending going. Because, like, for example, when Syria inevitably falls, we're going to get a massive migrant wave. So we're also going to get defense from that. You also got to factor. You got stuff like Ukraine. Well, the thing is, we on this side of the Atlantic are all shit in the bed over Russia. But let's say, for arguments like you're vindicated and Trump completely negotiates a peace with Russia, the Europeans won't feel as buoyed to rev up their defence spending because that's the main threat in their eyes. The only other thing is, of course, a massive refugee wave coming our way when Syria inevitably falls apart.
I don't, Mitch, to be clear, I don't think Trump is going to negotiate a peace deal with Putin. What I think Trump will do is just accept the reality on the ground. I don't think it's going to be a negotiated deal. The only question in my mind is Russia going to take Odessa, for example? That's the only question in my mind.
Well, going back to the Syria question, I think now that Putin's pretty much lost one of his key allies, he might drive a harder bargain over Ukraine for compensation for losing out in Syria.
He might also invest more heavily in Iran, which is another possibility. Because he will have lost his nice warm water port in Syria, as well as like Russian air bases and stuff. So it could be that he will switch to Iran as being the nearest friendly place to Russia. The other thing, of course, that's going to happen that we haven't mentioned is if Syria goes, and it does look like it is going to go, the Palestinians have no chance because they were the only conduit for getting friendly aid to the Palestinians. And it's going to be Israel's probably going to be able to try and shift what's left of the population in Gaza over to the West Bank or wherever they want to send them.
They'll just turf them on to us. Like Turkey won't want to keep them, so we'll just turf them on to somewhere like Greece or Bulgaria. So we just get saddled. So we're basically going to have something like. Was it like 1 million back in 2015, if I remember correctly, that Angela Merkel welcomed? It's probably going to be more like triple that the way we're going. With
Syria, because Israel is for the Israelis, but everywhere else is for everybody. So yeah, for sure.
They might get sent to Lebanon because that's what happened after the 1948 war. A lot of them got shoved over to there.
Quite possible. It's not gonna be good from Europe's point of view, as far as I can work out. But
I don't know if Lebanon could take it. Was they're practically halfway towards a failed state. I mean, I'm pretty sure Hezbollah makes up like a decent chunk of the government as well in Lebanon. So it's not like.
Well, the thing is, it's like because the state there is kind of paralyzed. They're kind of powerless to really deal with any like mass migrant waves coming in.
Yeah, definitely true.
And so all that happened is if a load of Palestinians came in who were Sunni, they would just go to the Sunni areas of Lebanon. Like Hezbollah wouldn't want them in their bit. And I suppose same in Syria. I imagine a lot of Syrian Christians will probably go to Lebanon because, Lebanon is still like 1/3 Christian, so they'll just go to all the Christian areas.
Yeah, very likely. Very likely. I don't think anything good's going to happen in the Middle East, to be honest with you. Things are not going well there at the moment. And I mean, it looks like it's okay for Israel, but then, Israel's got the total backing of America and basically controls American politics. So, that's what's going on there. So I don't know. I don't see anything particularly good going on. Assad and Syria were kind of the last holdouts from the GAE, apart from Iran, which America has this great hatred for some unknown reason, given that Iran is no threat to America at all. But I mean,
to be fair, Iranian revolution it's not a hostage crisis. So
oh yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, a long time ago. I remember that. When the Americans were going to do the rescue attempt and ended up burning their transport aircraft and helicopters in the desert because they ran into each other in a sandstorm. But yeah, it's if I was the Iranians, I would be trying to get nuclear weapons as soon as possible, because that's the only thing that's going to give them any security.
Yeah, that, and also I don't know if it's like just like they just have to get a lot more organized, because I mean they've just been slapped in the face by what Israel's done to Hezbollah, sort of decapitating the leadership there. So in a way, I mean, you got Trump for. I mean, to be fair, some people are saying Trump is massive anti-Iran. Yeah, he is anti-Iran from a Zionist point of view, but he doesn't want to do regime change. Like, he disavowed the idea of regime change because, of course, to do a regime change, you'd have to go to war. Half of it, I mean, there is a good groundswell of dissent against Islamic Republic in Iran. Like, there is economic problems there, and perhaps you might see some gay op in doing that. Like, if a gay were to topple the Iranian regime, they'll do so through a colour revolution.
I don't think they have enough support to do that at the moment. And if you attack Iran, of course, that's the one thing that's going to put the people there supporting their government more, which should be obvious to anyone, really.
Yeah. So it's going to be. I mean, I suppose that's one thing about the whole idea of Trump forcing Europe to spend more on NATO. Is like, oh yeah, sure, they might, but at the same time, they're just going to ask then, okay, well, what are we funding more money for? Because let's say I'm going to say Trump's position on Ukraine, basically, he doesn't give a damn, and like he's just willing to sell out Ukraine. Okay, so that might get the Europeans to arm up, sure, but you're going to have a bit of a drift away on a part of Europe over time.
It depends.
Different priorities.
It depends, Mitch, because if Trump withdraws large numbers of American troops from Europe, which he should, but if he does that and redeploys them to the Indo-Pacific, particularly like Japan and what have you, Guam, etc., that will force the Europeans to spend more money. It just will. But you look at how long Russia has taken to take the territory they've taken in Ukraine, and admittedly, the Russians have been fighting effectively the whole of the NATO armory, and a lot of Western money as well. That hasn't been pinched by the corrupt Ukrainians. But look how long they've taken to do this. So the idea that Russia is then suddenly going to invade, I don't know, Poland or Finland or the Baltic states is just ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous.
But that's the thing. One of the most hawkish NATO members are, of course, Finland, the Baltic states, and Poland. You've also got, for example, in Romania, they've practically cancelled their own election, like their first round, because the guy who won is basically anti-Ukraine. Like, he's not on board the NATO bandwagon in terms of the Ukraine debacle. So they're trying to turf him out. They've already just burning their system to the ground on that. So it's like I don't know what message, because on one hand you got in America where they've got Trump. Now Trump, he's not really a neocon type. Like, he's not a guy to sort of.
Yeah, I don't think
go
he's.
hardcore.
I don't think Trump's going to deliberately start foreign wars. I really don't.
Well,
He
the same-
might get
well, the same
drawn
time.
in. He might get drawn into one, but I don't think he wants to start one.
Yeah, which is one thing that's interesting to ask me is, okay, so you have Trump in America, again, like I said, but then on the opposite side of the ocean, it's leaders akin to Trump of his caliber in terms of not wanting foreign wars or whatever, they're getting shafted by our establishment over it. So, for
Oh,
example,
yeah.
Farage might well get shafted in the years to come. But what he tried to do with the Farage riots, I don't know what they're going to do in the next few years, but they'll try to do to him what they did to Trump over in America. They're already doing it in Romania, where Georgescu is getting gay-opped because he's not. Because basically, he won 22% of the vote. He was an outsider candidate. Well, not really outsider because he was part of the establishment for a long time and he was affiliated with a nationalist party, but he's an independent. And he's largely used TikTok among that got him a lot of Zoomers to vote for him and other stuff. Yeah, it's just basically it's like a parallel situation where you've got Europe, including ourselves, where we're massively shit-libby still, but America's going in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think Tomb of Arminius makes a good point in that the Democrats in these last few weeks, when they still have power, are doing their best to leave Trump with a big mess, for absolutely sure.
Yeah,
I mean, that's one thing that's happening for certain. But there's other things going on as well. I mean, Erdogan is taking his chance to increase Turkish influence in that part of the world. And Israel obviously are doing what Israel always does. And there are still people in Israel who want this greater Israel idea, and I'd say they're closer to it now than they were before the things that are happening in Syria. So I don't know.
Yeah. The only other point I was going to say is, so in terms of Indo-Pacific, you take somewhere like Germany, for example, like their biggest export market is, of course, China, although they're screwed all the way because China's population shrinking, that means the market shrinks, and so German products don't profit the German economy as much as they do, especially when you factor also Nord Stream got nuked. So German
and German industry is not doing well. I mean, Germany's in a bit of a depression at the moment, to say the least.
Yeah. So as I said, like it's just going to be like a situation where, let's say, Trump will say to our side of the Atlantic, going, increase your defense funding. But then Trump's priorities are massively different from what the Europeans are wanting. Because you take Finland and Poland, for example, they're all crap in the bed over Russia. Germany doesn't want to pivot to Indo-Pacific because they don't want to antagonize China.
Oh, they just won't. They just won't. Nor will the French. The only people that will do that almost certainly are the Brits, because puppy dog Britain will do that almost certainly. But that even depends on what happens with this latest round of defense cuts. I'm hearing lots of stories that one of the Royal Navy carriers might be mothballed. And if that happens, that doesn't mean you go from 2 carriers to 1 carrier. That means you go to no carriers at all for about 4 months of a year, at least. Just like the French, you've only got 1 carrier, which means France often has no carrier at all. You have to have at least 2 to mostly have 1 available. And you really need 3, to be honest, but whatever. But if there's only 1, you basically don't have a carrier at all for about a third of the time. But I can see that happening quite easily under this government. The Starmer's lot have no clue on defense whatsoever. So, I mean, I actually made a post on Twitter last week. They were talking about Ajax, which is this very large, heavy, big reconnaissance vehicle that the British Army wasted millions and millions and millions of pounds on. And the senior British officers were describing it as transformational. So I suggested, does that mean it's going to have tranny crews? Because that's about the only way it's going to be transformational. Because it's a perfectly ordinary reconnaissance vehicle. It's just much bigger and heavier than it should be. But anyway, different story. Hitman, did you have any final points you wanted to bring up?
No, it's just going off what Tim Varminius has said in the chat, that basically the Americans are going ham on Ukraine, the Middle East, everywhere, just trying to cause as much of a mess for Trump when he gets in. So,
yeah, that's definitely happening. I mean, that's very, very obvious. It's Tim of Arminius is talking about Boxer, which is the 8x8 wheeled armored personnel carrier that Britain is adopting, which is another very big, quite vulnerable vehicle. But there we go. But yeah, any final points, Mitch? Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't think there's a lot else to talk about this week.
no, there's not really, no, because we've done Syria, we've done Starmer's comments, we talked about Trump, and obviously South Korea. So,
yeah, been a bit all over the world this evening, but that's what's going on in the world at the moment. We will be back for our 201st stream next week. I don't know if we'll do a stream after that before Christmas. We may take a break after that, but we'll talk about that next week. I will say to people, if you are interested in history and also politics, do come back next Friday. And History Bro and I and possibly Aaron will be talking about Winston Churchill from 1933 to 1945 and the huge amount of damage he did to British power between 1900 and 1945. So yeah, come and check that out. Do check part 1, which you will find on the channel. We did it yesterday, so pretty good stream, I think. And anything you'd like to plug, Hitman, your channel?
Yes, subscribe to my channel. I streamed earlier today with my good friend Hunger, the penultimate episode of our series of the Chatham House version of history on the work of Middle East scholar Eli Kaduri. We were looking at the relationship between Christianity and nationalism in the Middle East. So if you're interested, check that out. And next Tuesday is the next episode of my weekly show, The Archival Discourses. I'll be having Hunger and American Elitists back to carry on the shit show that is a Zionist article we're reading, because we're looking delving into the Zionist worldview. So if you're interested in that, then please come and give that a watch as well.
That was by Crocoduck, wasn't it, him? And I actually remember Crocoduck when he was like appearing around our sphere.
Yes, King Crocoduck, self-proclaimed Giga Zionist.
Yeah. No, I actually watched the first one of those. That was quite an amusing stream. So I would recommend it to people. I will be putting links to Hitman and AI's channel under the in the comments under this stream later on. Anything you wanted to plug, Mitch?
Nah, not for me.
Okay, I will play us out with a tune, as I do quite often. See how well this works. Okay, and that was a famous British tune, The Girl I Left Behind Me, and it's from Patriotic Archive. Please go and check out his channel. He's a friend of the channel. And if you're into military, naval, and traditional folk music, sea shanties, all that kind of stuff, go and check out Patriotic Archives channel. Do make sure you subscribe to the channel, guys. That way you won't miss when I do extra streams. And I am going to start to try to do at least 2 streams a week, because if I don't do that, the channel simply doesn't grow. And, you know, if it's not growing, it's not getting to enough people. I did have a quick check that we don't have any super chats on Entropy. The super chat that was sent to us last week, I did answer right at the start of the stream, and I also answered it yesterday on the Churchill stream. So if you send us a super chat, I do make sure I answer them. Thank you to my guests, AI, who hopefully will get his electricity back soon, to Mitch and to Hitman. And we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, do not let the bastards grind you down.